Welcome to Water Talk with Paul the Waterman, brought to you by Water Pros. Paul the Waterman is Colorado's expert on all things related to the water we use and drink in our homes. Have you ever thought about where your water actually comes from? Is it safe to drink? Is it harmful to my health, my skin, my hair? Paul the Waterman knows water, and he has the answers. Haystack Help Radio proudly presents Water Talk. Now here's your host, Scott Watley, and owner of Water Pros, Paul the Waterman.
Old Ann and I, with throats burned dry and souls that cry for water, water, cool, water, clear, water,
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all
Welcome to Water Talk. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
It's
buddy.
Friday.
Welcome back.
How's your week been, Mr. Paul the Waterman?
It's been fun. It's been exciting, and man, there's a lot to talk about. I did an autopsy of a non-electric water softener from a customer.
Yeah, I saw your
video on YouTube. You go look up Paul the Waterman, and here's the thing: everybody gets this wrong. When you have well water, Scott, and you have iron content, the best form of water filtration to remove hardness and iron is ion exchange resin. But if you try to put a filter beforehand, that filter assembly is going to accumulate iron because, it slows. Any kind of water filter will slow water, flow. And once you slow the flow rate down, then the iron will oxidize and coat that filter. And once you have oxidized iron, game over. It's going to pass through any kind of filtration system. So, a non-electric, water dual tank water softener has no choice but to use a pre-filter because it's not electric. It operates in the water flow. Well, any kind of debris will plug up the gearing system. And so we had a customer that, had a dual tank non-electric system in, and it just gummed up the iron in the pre-filter assembly, oxidized iron. And
I couldn't believe that thing came apart.
Did you see that? I mean, it was caked on there. And so I want to point folks out, we do dual tank electric water softeners. And so the control valve has a motor, so I don't need to have a pre-filter, right? That motor, doesn't, get interrupted. So resin is ideal for removing hardness and iron content. And then, you alternate tanks back and forth, and you take clean water from one tank to backwash the other tank. But the big difference is that I have an electric motor that, has a smart computer system, battery backup for the programming, that does not need pre-filter. And so I do not put a pre-filter in when it comes to hardness and iron content. I let the resin do its job. Ion exchange resin will remove calcium carbonate as hard water and ferrous iron is clear water iron, and it will remove it. And then I take clean water from one tank to backwash the other tank. So, that dual tank, I was thinking about it, that dual tank non-electric water softener, that technology is as old as me. It's 56 years old. And, they can't... Ancient. They can't re-engineer it. They've tried, and so they can't re-engineer it. And so what happens is that, it's stuck on, that technology that, it was developed back then. The whole theory on a dual tank system, to me, is that, you never run out of, soft water. Well, you know what? Smart computer single tank water softeners with 32,000 grain capacity, you'll never run out of soft water. If you're in a municipal water supply, you never will, no matter what. You're on well water, that's where it's important to, have that clean water to backwash. Now, if I go into a municipality where the water hardness is 25 grains or above, I'll recommend a dual tank softener all day long. But, the technology, is, if it's just, you shouldn't have to, rely and want to change a pre-filter all the time because, anything that oxidizes will pass through a water softener. Just remember that. The water softener ideally functions grabbing everything as a liquid. And then I want to go back and mention one more thing. Any kind of single tank iron filter system, they'll call them iron busters. They require berm or green sand. Absolutely won't work because it's a heavy media. That media is 100 pounds per cubic foot. So a water softening control valve is not a pump. It doesn't generate water pressure, right? And your well water that's coming to the home, even at 12 or 15 gallons per minute, is not enough to agitate that media. So the media doesn't lift. It doesn't get 100% rinse. So eventually, iron will oxidize, and the single tank system, remember, has no choice but to use the same dirty water. So when you have iron content, you're going through, a backwashing process with the same dirty water. You're going to oxidize that iron during the backwashing. Right. So then, again, iron will build up. So folks out there in well water, if you got a single tank system and an iron filter, you pull the lid off the back of your toilet tank, you're going to see that orange staining water in the back of the holding tank. Well, that's what's in your hot water heater.
All right.
So, I want to point that out to folks because, those systems, those dual tank non-electric systems can be pretty pricey. Mm-hmm. And then, you have to buy, that pre-filter assembly, and that's, not cheap, but you're setting yourself up to fail. And, I hate to say it, but eventually you're just wasting your money.
Right. Are there some areas that you go to where well water's soft water, or is that rare?
No, that's rare, but Louisville... Mm-hmm. Parts of Louisville, parts of Fort Collins, can have naturally soft water. I've been to areas where the water's soft in well water, but they have what's called silica. And that's down South Peyton, parts of Colorado Springs, can have naturally soft water, but silica. And now silica acts like hard water. You get the buildup just like hardness, but silica requires an opposite, charged resin. So instead of an ion resin, you need an anion resin to remove it. Right. So that's why, I always say water treatment isn't plug and play. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things that's really important, and I want to jump to something else real quick.
Okay. See, all I have to say is, Paul, welcome to the show, and then I'm good.
Off and running, right? So, you be aware of companies that, come to your home and want to do what I call the dog and pony show. They come in and they want to do they use the demo or their demonstration, right, to sell water filtration. So they're trying to alarm you or create concern or create panic. So you feel at that moment you're buying off of, oh my gosh, my water's bad for me. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's so unethical. It's not even funny. They're not training their sales reps, in my opinion, to be water technicians. They're not training them so they can explain.
They're trained to sell.
Right. Let's just be honest. But they're trained to do the demo, and it's the demo that's designed to sell the product. Mm-hmm. And that's why, they're going out there and they're trying to create this fear that, where I think it's unethical, create this fear, and then they're going to sell them an $8,000, $12,000 system. You're financing a car payment because you see all this stuff. And one of the things in a water treatment, demonstration, they're still doing it today, and I think it's completely unethical. It's called the precipitation test, Scott. And you saw that, where they take a dye, a solution, and they take soft water and it's nice and clear, and then they take, hard water and it turns cloudy. And they're trying to say that that's dangerous to drink. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the case. So, that's, and it's sad, I heard, today that's still going on. I think what you do, people know water's bad, right? They know we have forever chemicals in the water. They know what hard water does. So you should be able to sit down and explain to them, what this system's going to do and what it's going to remove, right? With our Echo Pro Max. So we've got the Echo Pro Max that removes the total chlorine content, the forever chemicals, PFAs, out of the water. Also, removes the hardness content all in one. It's bacteria resistant. And so that's something, and so we explain, to folks, what happens. Water filtration, again, is not plug and play. And so I was at a house this morning in Aurora, 80016 zip code, and they had over, a half part per million of total chlorine content in the hot water, coming out of the hot water. And that's ideal for a swimming pool. And so I test that to show folks, you take a shower, you're breathing that in. those are the kind of tests, right, that you're informing them what's going on. Just like what I did with you in Victoria. Only thing I asked for was a clean washcloth.
Yeah, you asked for stuff from my house.
Right. I took a clean washcloth. We rinsed it with bottled water because bottled water is soft water to show you what hard water does. Now, you do a soap test. And so what the soap test is part of this hour-long demonstration. They take soft water, they take your water, then they have this so-called soap solution, and they're adding drops of soap until they can see soap suds. So that's no different than taking your washcloth and doing I call it the washcloth test. So you say, hey, here's the effects of hard water. This is because how do you really know when someone's dumping a chemical, or they say a soap solution in a bottle, what is really that's made up?
Sure, what's
right?
in it?
What's in it, right? But if you take, all you got to do is take a clean washcloth. I've got a video on our website. It's called the washcloth test. Take a clean washcloth, rinse it with bottled water because bottled water is soft, and then you see the cloudy, water in the leftover soap.
I mean, the way I described it with ours in Highlands Ranch, it looked like skim milk when we poured it from the bowl to a clear glass.
Right.
And we did it like 2 or 3 times, and it still looked
right. We rinsed it 2 or 3 times. So we take a mixing bowl. So you can do this at home. You take a mixing bowl of washcloth, right? You pour bottled water in the mixing bowl. You mix it up like you're kneading dough, right, to make rolls, and then you pour it in a clear glass, and you see the trapped soap that comes out of the washcloth. And then 9 times out of 10, then you can smell the soap in the washcloth because hard water and soap don't work well together.
Yeah.
So that's so those are 2 main things I wanted to
Where are most of your well water type customers? I mean, what areas are a lot of the wells?
Well, we go up to. I was in Milliken this week. We outside of Alt. We go to outside of Loveland. Then we go to out east to Kingsburg, and then we'll go to Strasburg, and we'll go. From I-76 to I-70 out east, and we go to, Kiowa.
Do you see those areas kind of growing a little bit?
It's crazy how it's growing.
Used to have a house, and, man, you couldn't even see another house, and now they're building. So what does that do to the water when they dig other wells and do all that?
So Arapahoe County mainly is on, let's pick on Arapahoe County, because that's I didn't realize how far east Arapahoe County goes. And then it kind of runs into Elbert County there, and then I-76, Arapahoe County, and Adams County kind of touch each other. But with all the building going on, there's only so much water that's available.
Yep.
And so what's going to happen is that, you draw down, you're drawing down the aquifer. But, Mark, who was on last week with us, he works at the water treatment plant. He said it best. There's only so much water there for you to draw from, but then if municipalities take their wastewater and they're injecting it back into the ground, right, to fill up the aquifers, in a sense it's reusable water, isn't it? So everybody is at a reusable water state. I mean, I just saw an article in Florida, because of the growth of Florida, Miami area, they're going to do the same thing that Castle Rock's doing, is going from the toilet to the tap. And San Diego was one of the first ones to really start that process. You have reusable water.
Right.
And so, we have another situation where outside of Parker, they had high chlorine content, and the high chlorine content in the municipal water supply was causing iron to oxidize out of the water. So what that tells me is the water source is a groundwater source with iron. Chlorine is an oxidizer, and so when they're disinfecting it with the chlorine, iron converts to a solid.
Right. So would it be a safe thing to say is, hey, if you're listening and you're on well water, when you get home tonight, go lift that
lid back of the
lid
toilet
off the back of the toilet and just see what it looks like?
Well, if you got to think about this, if you have a single tank filtration system, right, on well water, the only thing that you can use, is the same dirty water to rinse the filter media. And when you do that, how clean does the filter media get? See, a single tank water softener cannot handle anything above a 0.5 part per million iron content, which that's pretty much all well water, right, is almost at a 0.5 part per million. Why? Because it uses the same dirty water. Now, to compensate that, you can, have it go through back, increase the times that it cleans itself. You go through more, water softening salt, increase the salt dosage. That's another thing, too, is that, there's companies out there. this is technical. A water softener has 1 cubic foot of resin.
Okay.
To clean 1 cubic foot of resin, you should have your salt dosage at 15 pounds. Okay? Now, if you have a system where you can't set the pounds of salt per the filter media, and you have a system that has a salt that goes high, medium, or low for your salt dosage, well, 9 times out of 10, that high setting is still not going to be enough to, clean the system properly. So then, to compensate, you really should set that type of a unit to backwash every 3 days to make sure that the system's getting enough detergent. Water softening salt is detergent. The saline solution is the rinsing agent. That's what cleans the filter media. So resin grabs calcium as a liquid, it grabs the ferrous iron as a liquid, and then that saline solution, which is water softening salt with water equals a saline, causes the resin then to basically release those hardness and iron ions, and it's sent down the drain.
Wow. Paul the Waterman is with us. It is Water Pros, 303-862-5554. Hey, that in-home water test Paul just mentioned is absolutely complimentary. All you have to do is call 303-862-5554. We're going to hit a quick break. Back with more right after this. Welcome back to Water Talk. My name is Scott Watley. The man in the room is Paul the Waterman. Hey, Paul is ready to help you out. It is Water Pros. Once again, 303-862-5554. I'm going to separate this, Paul, this question as for well customers, but then it may be fitting for all. Do you find when you go into these homes that, they've got some equipment there that was sold to them really wrong because that equipment would have never solved their problem? Right. Or equipment that at the time maybe was sufficient, but now just with water changes, whatever, I'm going to let you educate me there. What are you seeing?
So, great question. First of all, there's no such thing as salt-free water softeners. Anybody that goes online and buys the common ones, not to give them a plug, but Pelican or Aquasana, they advertise salt-free water softeners. That's not real. They do not exist. Another, major company is trying to get into the saltless, filtration system. Just understand, water softening salt is not a filtration mechanism. It's the detergent converted to saline to clean the resin that removes hardness, iron content, total chlorine content. So back in the day, Denver was the only one. Let's say 10 years ago, was the only one that was consistently using a chloramine. That's a chlorine and ammonia. And then, pretty much the rest of the metro area now uses the same chloramine. So why do they do that? Well, thanks to our guest, Mark, what we learned is that chlorine doesn't kill the bacteria or virus. It sterilizes it. So cities like Inglewood and Brighton years ago, they had a boil order because bacteria is in the water. Well, what was happening is that the chlorine wasn't lasting because chlorine is a gas that can oxidize it off gas out of the water supply, or there wasn't enough chlorine to feed the whole line anyway. They had a bacteria issue, a boil order. So when you add ammonia to it in the 2-chloramine, the contact time stays. It doesn't dissipate. That's why I go to homes and test the hot water to show them that chlorine builds up in the hot water heaters. Right. Okay. So to answer your question, there's filter systems out there that are designed to remove the chlorine, but not the ammonia. So chlorine gets removed, but then the ammonia is left. And it's better, believe it or not, to drink it as a chloramine than it is to drink it as ammonia. So, that's a great question. So you have to make sure that any inline filter you're using or filter media. So what I found out when we started making the switch to the chloramine, I was in a home off of Louisville, and really high chlorine content was like close to 3 parts per million. It was huge. And we put a single stage filter in, and I was still getting, positive on the total chlorine test. That's when I realized that, okay, we have to switch gears, and we had to use basically a 2-stage, carbon filter to get it all out of the water. And I remember at the time, before I had my own company, I was working for, Chuck the Waterman, Chuck Minot.
Sure.
And I remember calling Chuck and I said, "Hey, Chuck," I said, "we got a problem. We have to have another carbon filter here." And, Chuck quotes, "Well, this is what the manufacturer says." And I said, "I don't care what that book says. Come out here and let's test it." And sure enough, he met me at the house and I showed him, this is, here's the test before and here's after.
Wow.
So that's when, I first see. One of the things that I appreciate about the industry that I'm in is that the continuous education that you get is on-the-job training. There's really, I understand there's books out there that can, suggest, filtration media, this will work, but you really need to be out in the field to see what's happening. For example, low pH, if you're on well water and if you have acidic water, and we talked about iron filters like berm or green sand. Well, low pH will disintegrate the berm or green sand, eat it up. There's a filter media called zeolite. It's a crystalite media. Acidic water will eat that up. And so that's, stuff you learn. Okay, this doesn't work. No matter what the book says, acidic water doesn't happen. And a lot of folks down in Monument, Black Forest, have high acidity. And acidic water can eat at your pipes. I was at a home, in Commerce City, believe it or not. They have an electrolysis situation going on because they have galvanized pipe connected to copper pipe. So that's two separate different metals, and that creates electrolysis. So, we're going to help them out next week.
Wow.
So, those are things that, on the job education. And doing this show, I mean, look how much research that we've done, right? How much reading that we've done, and we learned, and we tell folks, we give them the website, hey,
Sure.
go right here, check it out. So, that's one thing. It's a continuous education, and I appreciate that. But, so I've seen what works and what doesn't work. That's why I wanted to start the show talking about that dual tank non-electric system, because folks paid a pretty penny for that, and it was set up to fail. It had no choice of succeeding because of the pre-filter that they had to use before it.
Right.
And so, and once again, pre-filter will, cause iron to oxidize, and then once you get oxidized iron, game over. It'll plug up any filtration system. I can put a dual tank electric computer valve without a pre-filter because that motor, right, powers through it.
What are you seeing out there? And I got a minute. What are you seeing out there as far as prices from competitors?
Low line, $6,500 to close to $8,000, and then we've seen some. I heard folks said that they wanted $12,000.
Well, can we carry over our special we said a week ago?
I don't want to do that. Why do I have to do that?
Let's do this. You got to start with the water softener.
Here's what I'm going to do.
So let's do a water softener.
So we'll do this. I'll do a complete package. Water softener, you twist my arm. I'll do a water softener, reverse osmosis, all in for $49.95.
$49.95.
Yeah, that's almost half.
Yep.
Of what my competitors are just for a softener. But I'll do $49.95. That's the best American-made product I think we can do.
Absolutely.
You talked me into it. I didn't want to, but I will do it for you.
That's the Water Talk special. Hey, you can only get it when you call this number, 303-862-5554, 303-862-5554. Call for that special and for your free in-home water test with our friend Paul the Waterman. Paul, thanks for your time, sir.
Thank you. Everybody out there,
man.
Be blessed. God bless America.
God bless America. It's true. All right. Thanks for being with us today for Water Talk and Haystack Help Radio. Hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.